Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You'll hear a head teacher and a teacher discussing a school camping trip. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Can I speak to you for a moment?
Of course, Jamie. Come in. Have a seat. I've just finished looking through the reports for this term. It looks like the pupils are doing very well.
Yes, I think they are. It's all going fine.
So, Jamie, what's on your mind?
Well, I've been thinking about next month's camping trip, the one for Year 10.
Yes, we've got it scheduled for the 23rd to the 26th, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, I think it's the 24th to the 27th.
Let's just check. Oh, right. Yes, you're right. So...
Well, I've been thinking about how we might possibly make this year's event even better than last year's. Not that last year's wasn't great, but...
Suggestions for improvement are always welcome, Jamie. So, what have you been thinking about?
Well, to tell the truth, I wasn't completely happy with the camp we used last year. It was rather small, and I didn't feel that the grounds were particularly well kept.
Go on.
I did some searching, and I think I found the perfect spot. It's called Shepton Meadows, and...
Is that the campsite in the Lake District?
No, actually it's just outside Carlisle. It's a huge site, and it's on a lovely lake, Lake Brant, I believe it's called. Half the site is forested, and the rest, the actual camping area, is grassy. For kids that rarely get to see anything more than concrete, it's ideal. And the facilities are amazing. There's a basketball court, a large pool, and a football pitch. There are well-marked trails through the forest for hiking, and the lake is there for swimming and other water sports. I believe there's even a lifeguard service.
That sounds like it might suit our purposes perfectly. Did you happen to find out about availability and cost?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. I called them yesterday evening, and there are plenty of spots available. And because we're a non-profit organisation, they said they would give me a reduction in the price.
If I remember correctly, we paid £5 a head last year.
Yes, per night, right?
Yes, each child paid £10 for the 2 nights.
Well, at this campsite, it's only £4 per night. And they told me that if we had over 50 children, which we do, they could give us a further 10% off.
That's very reasonable, isn't it? Well, from what you've told me, I think we should probably go ahead and book.
Excellent. I'm sure the children will love it.
I'm sure they will.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, Jamie, have you given any thought to an itinerary by any chance?
As a matter of fact, I have. Wait 1 second. Yes, here it is. I've made a few notes. Okay, so, now, these are just ideas, of course.
Yes, go on. Let's hear what you've got.
Right. We time it so that we arrive at the camp around 7 on Friday evening. It'll still be light then, and we'll have plenty of time to set up camp and get ourselves settled in. At 8, we could have a barbecue, hamburgers and hot dogs, something that's nice and easy to prepare.
And that children love.
Yes. Then, lights out would be at 9:30, so the children will get a good night's sleep and be up bright and early at 7 on Saturday morning. Breakfast would be at 7:30, an hour's hiking from 8 till 9, and then a couple of hours at the lake. That would take us up to 11. I think that an hour of free time would then be in order. Let them have a chance to explore a bit on their own,
Yes, great idea. And then?
Let's see, a picnic lunch at 12, and then sports in the afternoon till 4. Another swim until 5, and then supper. After clean-up, around 6:30, we could have a talk-back session, where the children get a chance to discuss their day and anything else they might have on their minds. Then a campfire and sing-along at 8, back to the tents at 9:30, and, well, that takes care of Saturday.
Excellent, excellent. That would certainly keep them busy. What about Sunday?
Sunday, right. As on Saturday, same wake-up and breakfast times, and then I thought we could go on a bit of a day trip. There are some caves about an hour's walk from the camp, which I thought the children might find interesting. We could leave at 8, which would mean we'd get to the caves at 9. They could explore for a couple of hours, and we'd head back at 11. 12 o'clock would see us back at the meadows. An hour's swim, and then lunch at 1. Then we could have organised games in the afternoon until supper at 5. It would take us an hour to clean up our sites and pack up. We'd be on the buses at 6 and all set to head back into the city.
Well now, you've certainly put a lot of thought into this, Jamie, and it's paid off. I think it sounds wonderful. I can't think of a thing that needs to be changed. Let's go for it.
Brilliant. I'll get the itinerary printed up and put it up on the notice board this afternoon.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a tour guide talking to a group of visitors at a museum. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to the museum. Before we go inside, I'd like to remind you of one or two things. Firstly, you'll be pleased to know that admission is free to all visitors, so explore at your leisure, and if you can't take it all in today, you can come back again and again without any charge at all. Opening hours are from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. most days, but the museum closes a little later on Thursday and Friday evenings. There are new multimedia guides available in 10 languages. They can be picked up from the desk in the covered courtyard for £4.50, and you can have it with you all day, from opening time in the morning until half an hour before closing. But you will need to produce ID. A passport, driver's license or national identity card are all acceptable. These multimedia guides have audio commentary as well as images and an interactive map for easy navigation. They're simple to operate, and you will get a more detailed insight into many of the objects in the various galleries. As a security measure, Apart from your camera and a purse, wallet or small handbag, your other belongings such as large bags, coats and umbrellas will have to be left at the cloakroom. Please note that the museum has recently revised the regulations for the size of bags and parcels that it will accept in its cloakrooms. I think the maximum size is 40 by 40 by 50 centimetres with a maximum weight of 8 kilograms. The only exception to this is prams and pushchairs. There is a charge of £1 per item. The main cloakroom is to the left of the main entrance, and there is another one at the north entrance. It may seem obvious, but may I remind you also that you should set your mobile phone to silent or turn it off altogether while you are in the museum, and do not carry or consume any food or drink in the exhibition halls. If you are hungry, there is an excellent restaurant where you can purchase a light lunch or a full meal. If it's just a hot beverage you want, then I can recommend taking a break at the Gallery Cafe.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
As we enter the museum from the south by going through the main entrance, as I said before, you'll find the cloakroom immediately on your left, and on your right is the museum shop. They have an outstanding range of postcards and souvenirs in there, and it's well worth a visit, but perhaps best left till you're on your way out. Then you'll know exactly what you want. The big room to the right of the entrance, behind the shop, is the reference library. Straight ahead of you, yes, the huge circular room is the main reading room. If you decide to go in there, please keep noise to a minimum out of respect for the writers and scholars who use it for their research. The reading room is surrounded by what is known as the Great Court. Indeed, it used to be an open courtyard, but you will see that it is now completely covered by a magnificent glass and steel structure. If you walk around the Great Court in a clockwise direction, on the west side, you'll see the entrance to the Long Hall of Ancient Egypt, which has an amazing collection of Egyptian antiquities. The gallery behind the reading room, directly opposite the entrance, is devoted to China and Southeast Asia. Here you'll see Chinese civilization explored chronologically from the Neolithic period through to the 21st century. The restrooms for both men and women are located in the northeast corner of this floor, but don't worry, there are others available on the floors above. Another huge gallery extends along the eastern side of the courtyard, and this is given over to Greece and Rome. The sculptures in this section are absolutely spellbinding. Take your time looking at all the exhibits, and when you're ready to view what's on the next floor, take the magnificent marble staircase by the entrance.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You'll hear a tutor and a student talking about the history of the scientific method. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25. Hello, Simon. Come in. Take a seat. Now, I wanted to talk to you about your assignment.
Yes, the one on the scientific method.
That's right. I just wanted to see how you were getting on.
Well, I think it's fine. I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of work on it because I've been working on other things. But what I've read so far seems fine.
How many of the references that I gave you have you managed to get hold of?
Not too many, I'm afraid. It seems that everyone else is working on the same things at the same time. And every time I look, the books are checked out from the library.
Right. Well, I think that we can go over the main ground together now. That way, even if you don't manage to go through all the references in detail, you'll still have an overview. What has helped you most so far?
I've managed to have a look at 3 of them. I thought that Johnson made some good points, but it was hard to follow the line of her argument. Bradman was simple and straightforward, and I felt as if I got a lot out of that. I wish I could say the same for Whittaker. To be honest, I didn't get very far with that.
Okay, that's more or less what I'd expect. So tell me, what have you learned so far about the role of the Egyptians and the Babylonians?
Yes. Well, there's evidence that the basic components of the scientific method, examination, diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis, were being used in the early 1600s BC, especially in the treatment of certain illness.
Good. Yes, that's right. And the point, of course, is that that represented a considerable advance over relatively simple, non-empirical approaches, which usually attributed anything unknown to the actions of the gods, etc. Of course, the Egyptians and Babylonians did this as well, but what we see emerging here is a willingness to base opinion on systematic study of the real world, which is at the root of the scientific method.
I see. Right, yes. And then that reappears later.
Yes, although don't get carried away with the idea that it was a simple process of development. By the time we get to ancient Greece, let's take the period towards the middle of the 5th century BC, the rules governing the scientific method were practiced on a widespread scale, but there were still many people who believed that real truth could only be acquired by pure rational thought. Plato, of course, had a great influence on the development of the scientific method during this period.
Through his academy.
That's right. But then, as we know, a great deal of understanding of the scientific method disappeared as the old world order collapsed. It wasn't until the Middle Ages, sometime before the 11th century, that several versions of the scientific method emerged from the medieval Muslim world, all of which stressed the importance of experimentation in science.
Right. I think I've got the historical timeline.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The other thing I'm struggling with slightly is actually pinning down precisely what we mean by the scientific method. I wonder if you could give me some pointers on that.
Sure. Well, it's best to think of the scientific method as a series of steps in a process which allows us to find answers to questions about the world around us. So the first step is to identify the problem. What is it that you want to know or explain?
And then I think the next step is designing an experiment.
But you can't design an experiment unless you know what you want your experiment to tell you.
Oh, yes. You need to form a hypothesis to be tested before you design the experiment.
So there's a very clear relationship between hypothesis and experiment. Having designed the experiment, then of course you go on to carry out the experiment. The particular procedure you follow, the protocol, will differ from experiment to experiment, but the underlying principle is the same. You analyse the data from the experiment in order to confirm or disprove your hypothesis.
Assuming the experiment is accurate.
Oh yes, if there's anything unusual about the data, or if the results are at all surprising, then you need to ask yourself whether the experiment could be flawed and whether the data could be unreliable. If the answer is yes, then it may be necessary to modify the experiment and go through the process again.
So, once you have reliable, valid results,
Then the final step is to communicate them. The wider scientific community needs to know about the results, and publication in journals is the accepted way.
okay, I think I've got the basics.
It's going to get more complicated as we begin to look at some people who have criticised the scientific method. So you need to make sure that you understand things up to this point. Let me know if you have any further problems with it. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecture on the production and trade of rice. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Good morning and welcome to our inaugural lecture on agricultural economics. Today's topic is the world's production and trade of rice. As you are all well aware, rice is the staple ingredient in the diet of much of the world's population. Its importance as a food cereal in the human diet cannot be underestimated. In fact, it's a close second to wheat. About 560 million metric tons of rice is grown each year, compared with about 600 million metric tons of wheat. Coarse grains, such as corn, sorghum, barley, oats, rye, and millet, mostly go into animal feed, which, by the way, is seen by many as a wasteful and inefficient use of fertile land, because around 4 kilos of grain is needed to produce about half a kilo of beef. Some 900 million metric tons of coarse grains are grown annually worldwide, and a further 300 million metric tons of grain is produced for the oil in its seeds. Now, I'll return to the subject of rice production. What do we know about rice production? Well, firstly, rice produces more food energy per hectare than any other cereal grain, and almost as much protein per hectare as wheat. Secondly, the production of rice has more than doubled in the last 40 years. How has this increase in production come about? Mainly as a result of improved field yields. The actual land area planted in rice has only risen by about 30%. As you know, rice is primarily grown in flooded fields, and therefore cultivation area is restricted by the sort of soil and the availability of water. Although rice can be grown on dry land, it is essentially after all a type of grass. The yields and quality in this case are much lower and other grasses and weeds can easily overtake the rice. As yet there are no herbicides that can selectively kill other grass types without killing the rice. Much of the world's rice is still grown and cultivated by hand, because for mechanized farming, the land must be able to be drained and hold heavy equipment. Of the total rice production, it's no surprise to learn that the greatest proportion by far is grown and consumed in Asia. You will see from the chart that the leading producers of rice are China at around 39%, followed by India with a quarter of the total. Indonesia produces almost 1/10, and other countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan and Brazil grow another 25, almost 26% of the total. As I said before, most rice is consumed in the countries where it is grown. That means that very little rice is actually traded, and for this reason, the market price is very volatile. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.